My name is Myra Ingram. I'm 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my own mother hired 3 lawyers to force me to sign away the inheritance my father left me, right in the middle of her living room. She called it a family meeting. I call it an ambush. They thought I would come alone. They thought I would tremble at legal jargon and Latin phrases. They thought the daughter they had dismissed for 20 years would bow her head and sign her name on the dotted line. They were wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. To understand why I was standing in that room, I need to take you back 25 years, to the day my parents divorced. I was 7 years old when my world split in two. My father, Thomas Ingram, was a carpenter. He built things with his hands: furniture, cabinets, dreams. What he couldn't build was a defense against my mother's lawyers. He didn't have money for the good ones. So when the divorce was finalized, he lost almost everything. Mom got the house, Mom got custody, Dad got 2 weekends a month and a heart full of regret. I still remember the last time he dropped me off at Mom's place after one of those weekends. He knelt down on the porch, his calloused hands gentle on my shoulders. "Remember this, sweetheart," he said. "No matter what anyone tells you, I'm always here. I'll always love you." I didn't understand why his eyes were wet. I was 7. I thought dads just cried sometimes. A year later, Mom remarried. Richard Porter walked into our lives with his pressed suits and his daughter Melissa from his first marriage. Suddenly, our family had a new structure, one where I didn't quite fit. Richard never hit me, he never yelled. He did something quieter, something that left no bruises but carved deep grooves into my sense of self. He simply acted as if I wasn't there. At dinner parties, Mom would introduce the family. "This is my husband Richard, and this is Melissa, our daughter." Then, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and this is Myra, she's from my previous marriage." Every time she said it, I felt myself shrink a little smaller. I learned to become invisible in that house. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant fewer questions, fewer comparisons, fewer moments where I came up short against Melissa's piano recitals and honor roll certificates. But invisible also meant forgotten. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a system, carefully maintained. When I was 16, I asked Mom for money to buy textbooks for the new semester. She looked at me like I'd asked for a diamond necklace. "Ask your father," she said. "He's supposed to provide for you." That same week, Melissa got a brand new car for her 18th birthday. A silver Honda Civic with a bow on the hood. The whole family gathered to watch her squeal with delight. I started working after school, washing dishes at a diner on 5th Street, mowing lawns for the neighbors. Every dollar I earned felt like a small rebellion. Richard noticed. Of course he did. "She's just like her father," he told Mom one night, not bothering to lower his voice. "Going to spend her whole life doing other people's dirty work." I pretended I didn't hear. But I heard. I always heard. The worst part came at my high school graduation. I had ranked top of my class in mathematics. A small victory, but mine. I expected nothing from my family, and they delivered exactly that. Mom forgot to invite the relatives. No aunts, no uncles, no cousins lined the auditorium seats. But someone was there. In the back row, wearing his old brown jacket that was slightly too big for his thinning frame, sat my father, Thomas Ingram. He clapped louder than anyone when my name was called. I could hear him over the entire crowd. After the ceremony, he found me outside. His eyes were shining again, like they had been all those years ago on the porch. He pressed an envelope into my hand. "I've been saving," he whispered, "for your college. Don't tell your mother." I kept that secret for 14 years, until Dad died, and the secret became a storm. The call came on a Tuesday, 7:04 a.m. I was pouring my first coffee of the day when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I wish I could say I'm glad I did, but the truth is more complicated than that. "Ms. Myra Ingram?" The voice was older, measured, professional. "Speaking." My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm an estate attorney. I was your father's lawyer and his friend. A pause. I'm very sorry to inform you that Thomas Ingram passed away 3 days ago. It was his heart. He went peacefully, in his sleep. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers. I watched it fall in slow motion, dark liquid splashing across the white kitchen tiles. I couldn't move to catch it. 3 days. My father had been dead for 3 days. Ms. Ingram, are you still there? Who else knows? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Your mother was notified, along with her husband. Of course they were. And not one of them had called me. Not a text, not a message. My own father was dead, and I found out from a stranger. Mr. Whitmore, I steadied myself against the counter. Why are you calling me? Your father left a will, Ms. Ingram, a very specific one. He named you as the sole beneficiary. I'd like to meet with you to discuss the details. Sole beneficiary. The words didn't make sense. Dad was a carpenter. He lived in a modest house, drove a 15-year-old truck. There must be some mistake. No mistake. Harold's voice softened slightly. Thomas was very deliberate about this. He made me promise to find you first, before anyone else. And Miss Ingram, he asked me to tell you not to contact anyone in your family about our meeting. He was very specific about that. My heart was pounding. Why? Because he knew they would try to take it from you. Harold Whitmore's office smelled like old books and furniture polish. The kind of smell that made you trust what happened inside these walls. He was older than I expected, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses, the weathered face of a man who had seen too many families tear themselves apart over money. He gestured for me to sit. A thick folder lay on the desk between us. Your father came to me 23 years ago, Harold began. Right after the divorce, he wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to him, you would be protected. He opened the folder. Inside was a document I recognized. A last will and testament, along with photographs, bank statements, property records. The house on Maple Street. Market value approximately $550,000. A savings account containing $180,000, some personal effects. Harold looked up at me. Total estate value is just under $800,000. I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. Dad was a carpenter. He was a carpenter who sold his workshop 15 years ago and invested wisely. Small rental properties, mostly. He lived simply so he could leave you this. Harold's voice was gentle. He never touched the principal. He wanted you to have it all. My eyes blurred. All those years, living in that one-bedroom house, driving that old truck, wearing the same brown jacket to my graduation. He could have lived better. He chose not to. Harold slid another item across the desk. A sealed envelope, my name written in Dad's familiar handwriting. He asked me to give you this when the time came. But Myra, Harold hesitated. He also asked me to tell you not to open it until you need it. He said you'll know when. I took the envelope. It weighed almost nothing. But somehow, it felt heavier than everything else in the room. There's one more thing, Harold said. Your mother. She's already asking questions. The silence lasted exactly 1 week. Then the phone calls started. Aunt Linda was first. Mom's younger sister, the one who always wore too much perfume and spoke in whispers at family gatherings. Myra, honey. Her voice dripped with practiced concern. I heard about your father's passing. Such a shame. And I heard there was some money involved. I said nothing. Sweetheart, your mother is very upset. She feels like you're shutting the family out. Don't you think you should share what Thomas left? After all, she was married to him too. I hung up. Uncle Robert called next. Then Cousin Denise. Then people I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly remembering my number, all with the same script. Your mother is heartbroken. Families should stick together. Thomas would have wanted you to share. Would he? I thought about the envelope in my drawer, still sealed. I thought about Harold's words. He knew they would try to take it from you. Finally, Mom herself called. It was a Thursday evening, and her voice was sweet. Too sweet. The kind of sweet that used to precede punishment when I was a child. Myra, darling, I've been trying to reach you. I heard about the will. Who told you? She ignored the question. We need to talk about this as a family. Your father and I were married for 9 years. Whatever he had, I helped him build. Surely you understand that? The will says otherwise. Silence. Then cooler. We should meet. Discuss this properly. I'll arrange a family meeting this weekend. My house. Saturday at 2. Fine. And Myra? Her voice hardened just slightly. Don't be difficult about this. We're your family. Everything can be resolved if you just cooperate. I didn't sleep that night. Something was coming. I could feel it. Before the family meeting, I agreed to meet Mom for coffee. Just the two of us, she said, to talk things through. She didn't come alone. Richard was already seated when I arrived at the cafe, his arms crossed over his chest like a bouncer at a club. Mom sat beside him, her face arranged in an expression of wounded motherhood. Myra, sweetheart. She gestured to the empty chair. Sit down. Richard wanted to join us. You don't mind, do you? I did mind, but I sat anyway. Richard didn't waste time. He leaned forward, his cologne sharp in my nostrils. Let's cut the crap, Myra. Your dad's gone. He left you some money. That's nice. But your mother sacrificed years raising you. She deserves her share. Her share of what? The estate. We're thinking 70-30. You keep 30%. Sign the papers, everyone's happy. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad left everything to me, I said quietly. That was his choice. His choice? Richard laughed. The man's dead. His choices don't matter anymore. Something cold settled in my chest. They matter to me. 70-30, Myra. Richard's voice dropped. That's the deal. No. No? He seemed genuinely surprised, like the idea of refusal hadn't crossed his mind. No. I stood up. The will is legal, it's final, and this conversation is over. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Richard's chair scrape against the floor. You're going to regret this. His voice carried across the cafe. Other customers turned to look. Trust me, you have no idea what you're dealing with. I didn't turn around, but I memorized those words. Later, I would be grateful I did. After the cafe, the campaign began in earnest. They didn't come at me directly. That wasn't their style. Instead, they mobilized the family network, turning relatives into soldiers in a war I never wanted. My phone became a weapon aimed at my sanity. Text messages piled up like accusations. From Aunt Linda, your mother cried all night, is this who you've become? From Uncle Robert. Thomas would be ashamed of you. You know that, right? From cousins I hadn't seen in a decade. Selfish, ungrateful, cold. Then came the Facebook post. Someone, I never confirmed who, wrote a long, emotional message in the family group chat. It painted a picture of a greedy daughter who had abandoned her mother, stolen her father's estate through manipulation, and now refused to share a single cent with the family that raised her. The comments poured in. Relatives I barely remembered called me names I can't repeat here. Old family friends clicked angry reactions. Someone shared a photo of me from years ago with the caption, "This is what betrayal looks like." I screenshotted everything, every message, every post, every accusation. I didn't know why I was doing it at the time. Some instinct, maybe. Harold's voice in my head. He knew they would try to take it from you. Melissa texted me for the first time in months. You're tearing this family apart, Myra. Mom won't stop crying. Why are you doing this to us? I typed a response, then deleted it. Then typed another. I'm not doing anything. I'm just refusing to give away what Dad gave me. She didn't reply. 2 weeks of silence followed. No calls, no texts, nothing. The silence was worse than the attacks, because silence meant they were planning. The call came on a Wednesday. Mom's voice was different this time. Flat, businesslike, stripped of all the fake sweetness. Myra, we need to meet. A family meeting. This Saturday, 2 o'clock, my house. What's there to discuss? The future. A pause. How we can all move forward. Richard thinks, we all think, there's a way to resolve this without lawyers, without courts, like a family. Something about the word lawyers made my stomach tighten. The way she said it, too casual, too rehearsed. Fine, I'll be there. Good. Was that satisfaction in her voice? And Myra? Come with an open mind. We just want what's best for everyone. I hung up and immediately called Harold. A family meeting, I told him. Saturday. She mentioned lawyers, but said we could resolve it without them. Harold was quiet for a moment. Then, if she mentioned lawyers at all, she has them. Count on it. What should I do? You should go. And you should have me nearby. If things go south, text me, I'll come in. I hesitated. What exactly are you expecting? I'm expecting them to pressure you. Intimidation. Maybe threats disguised as concern. They might have documents ready for you to sign, things that look reasonable but aren't. Harold's voice was steady. Don't sign anything, Myra. Don't agree to anything. And whatever happens, don't lose your temper. That's what they want. I thought about Richard's words at the cafe. You're going to regret this. Harold, do you think Dad saw this coming? Your father spent 20 years preparing for this exact scenario. Another pause. He loved you very much, Myra, and he knew your mother better than anyone. That night, I finally looked at the sealed envelope in my drawer. Not yet, but soon. The night before the family meeting, I opened the envelope. Dad's handwriting filled the page, slightly shaky, as if written by an older hand, but unmistakably his. The same hand that had signed my birthday cards, my graduation check, every small note he'd ever sent. My dearest Myra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Harold gave this to you now, it means your mother has started. I always knew she would. Some things never change. There's something I never told you. During the divorce, your mother threatened to take you away completely. No visits, no contact. She had a lawyer friend who said he could make it happen. I was terrified. You were only 7. So I signed away everything. The house, the savings, all of it. Just to keep my weekends with you. Just to keep some piece of my daughter in my life. I was wrong to give in. I should have fought harder. That regret has followed me every day since. But I won't let you make the same mistake. I won't let you bow to people who don't deserve your respect. Everything is prepared. Harold has the documentation, the will, the medical evaluations, every legal protection I could think of. He also has recordings. Things your mother said, things she thought no one would ever hear. Trust Harold. Trust yourself. And remember what I told you on that porch when you were 7. I'm always here. I'll always love you. Ways. Don't let them take what's yours, sweetheart. Not the money. That's just paper. Don't let them take your dignity. Your right to stand tall. That's my real gift to you. Love always, Dad. I sat in the dark for a long time after that, the letter pressed against my chest, tears streaming down my face. He had known. He had prepared. Even from beyond the grave, Dad was still protecting me. Friday morning, Harold's office, the last strategy session before the battle. He spread documents across the conference table like a general planning a campaign. The will, notarized and witnessed. Medical certifications confirming Dad's mental competence. Property records, bank statements. Everything organized, everything bulletproof. They'll try to claim Thomas wasn't of sound mind, Harold said. That's their only angle. They might have a family member willing to testify that he was confused, forgetful, easily manipulated. Aunt Linda, I said immediately. She'd lie for Mom. Then we have this. Harold held up a folder. Psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Patricia Morrison, conducted 8 weeks before your father's death. Full cognitive assessment. Thomas passed with flying colors. Any judge in California will accept this. He set down another item, a USB drive. 47 text messages, 23 recorded phone calls, 15 social media posts, all documenting a coordinated harassment campaign against you. Harold's eyes met mine. If they try to play the victim, we have proof of who the real aggressors are. I stared at the small device. Dad told you to collect this? Your father told me to prepare for war. Harold's voice softened. He hoped it wouldn't come to this, but he knew your mother. He knew her husband. He wanted you armed. What if they have lawyers tomorrow? Then I come in. Harold handed me his card. Keep your phone accessible. If you see legal representation, text me one word. Now. I'll be parked 2 blocks away. I took a deep breath. Anything else? Yes. Harold leaned forward. Whatever they say, whatever they accuse you of, don't react. Don't raise your voice, don't cry, don't give them ammunition. He paused. Your father always said you were stronger than you knew. Tomorrow you prove him right. I nodded. Ready or not, the war was coming. Saturday, 1:55 p.m. I pulled up to Mom's house with my heart hammering against my ribs. Harold's car was parked 2 blocks away, as promised. A small comfort, a lifeline. The house looked the same as it always had. White siding, manicured lawn, the American dream wrapped in a picket fence. I had spent years trying to belong inside those walls. Now they felt like enemy territory. I walked up the porch steps. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Mom stood there, her smile too wide, too practiced. Myra, you came. She leaned in for a hug I didn't return. Come in, come in. Everyone's waiting. Everyone. The living room was fuller than I expected. Mom and Richard occupied the main sofa. Aunt Linda perched on an armchair, avoiding my eyes. Uncle Robert stood by the window, arms crossed. Melissa sat in the corner, scrolling through her phone. And then there were the 3 people I didn't recognize. 2 men in expensive suits, 1 woman with a leather briefcase, all seated at the dining table, which had been cleared except for stacks of paper and a digital recorder. Mom followed my gaze. Her smile didn't waver. Myra, this is Mr. Stevens and Mr. Martinez, their attorneys, and this is their legal assistant. She gestured toward an empty chair. Sit down, sweetheart. We have a lot to discuss. I remained standing. You said this was a family meeting. It is, Richard's voice cut in, smug and satisfied. We're just making sure everything is properly documented. I looked at the papers on the table. The recording device. The lawyers who wouldn't meet my eyes. This wasn't a meeting. This was an ambush. And they thought I had walked into it alone. Mr. Stevens spoke first. Silver-haired, calm, the kind of lawyer who charged $500 an hour and looked like every dollar. Ms. Ingram, thank you for joining us today. He opened a folder with deliberate slowness. We represent your mother, Mrs. Diane Porter, in matters concerning the estate of Thomas Ingram. I said nothing, just waited. It's come to our attention that the will leaving you as sole beneficiary may be contestable. Stevens glanced at his notes. We have reason to believe Thomas Ingram was not of sound mind when he executed the document. We have witnesses prepared to testify to his declining mental state in his final years. Aunt Linda shifted in her chair, still not looking at me. Martinez leaned forward. Now, we could take this to probate court. These cases can drag on for years, Ms. Ingram. Legal fees alone could consume half the estate. Nobody wins in that scenario. But, Stevens continued smoothly, there's a simpler solution, a family settlement. You sign a voluntary relinquishment, transferring 80% of the estate to your mother. You retain 20%. Clean, simple. Everyone moves on with their lives. 80%. Not 70%, like Richard had demanded at the cafe. They'd gotten greedier. You're asking me to give away $600,000. We're asking you to be reasonable. Stevens pushed a thick stack of papers toward me. The documents are right here. Review them if you like, but I think you'll find everything is in order. I looked down at the top page, bold letters, Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights. Mom was watching me with bright, expectant eyes. Richard's smile could have cut glass. So, Stevens clicked his pen. Do we have a deal? I picked up the documents, flipped through them slowly. Then I smiled. You know what's funny? My smile seemed to confuse them. Richard recovered first. What's funny is you thinking you have a choice. He stood up, his face reddening. You're a nobody, Myra. A nobody with a nothing degree working a nothing job. And now you've got a little money, and suddenly you think you're better than us? Richard, Mom started. No, Diane. She needs to hear this. He jabbed a finger in my direction. You're just like your father. Stubborn. Stupid. He spent his whole life doing other people's dirty work, and he died alone in that crappy little house. That's your future, sweetheart. That's what you're protecting. Aunt Linda nodded eagerly. He's right, Myra. You've always been difficult, even as a child. Selfish, Uncle Robert added from the window. Always taking, never giving. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The tears looked real. I'd seen her practice them enough times to know they weren't. I raised you, she said, her voice trembling. I sacrificed everything for you. I gave you a home when your father abandoned you. He didn't abandon me. And this is how you repay me? By hoarding money that rightfully belongs to this family? Stevens cleared his throat. Ms. Ingram, I'd encourage you to consider your position carefully. Contesting this will would be expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately futile. Especially with the testimony we've gathered about your father's mental decline. He slid a pen across the table. Sign the papers. End this gracefully. I looked around the room. At my mother's fake tears, at Richard's barely contained rage, at the relatives who had made my childhood a masterclass in invisibility. They had prepared everything. Lawyers, witnesses, pressure. Everything except for one thing. I reached for my phone. Actually, I said calmly, I think I'd like a second opinion. I typed one word and hit send. Now. Richard laughed. What are you doing? Texting your friends? Nobody's coming to save you, Myra. I wouldn't be so sure. 2 minutes passed in tense silence. Stevens and Martinez exchanged glances. Mom's smile began to falter. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Mom looked at Richard, who looked at the lawyers, who looked at each other. I'll get it, I said, standing. Sit down, Richard started, but I was already at the door. Harold Whitmore stood on the porch, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, leather briefcase in hand. Behind his wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes were steady and sharp. Good afternoon, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. I hope I'm not interrupting. He walked past me into the living room. The effect was immediate. Stevens straightened in his chair. Martinez's confident smile vanished. Mom's face drained of color. Ladies and gentlemen. Harold set his briefcase on the coffee table. My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm a licensed estate attorney in the state of California, and I've been representing the interests of Thomas Ingram for the past 25 years. He paused. I am now representing his daughter, Myra Ingram. Richard found his voice first. This is a private family matter, which now includes legal representation on both sides. Harold clicked open his briefcase. I understand you have some concerns about the validity of Thomas Ingram's will. I'm delighted to address them. He pulled out a thick folder, then a USB drive, then a sealed envelope. Mom stared at the items like they were snakes coiled on her coffee table. Now then. Harold settled into an empty chair, perfectly at ease. Where shall we begin? The ambush had just been ambushed. I need to pause here for a moment, because I want to ask you something. If you were me, sitting in that room, surrounded by family who saw you as nothing more than an obstacle between them and money, what would you have done? Would you have signed to keep the peace? Or would you have stood your ground? Let me know in the comments. And if you're invested in what Harold said next, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened after this changed everything. Harold opened the folder with the precision of a surgeon. Let's start with your claim that Thomas Ingram was not of sound mind when he executed his will. He slid a document across the table toward Stevens. This is a psychiatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Patricia Morrison, a board-certified psychiatrist, 8 weeks before Mr. Ingram's death. Comprehensive cognitive assessment, memory, reasoning, decision-making capacity. Stevens glanced at the paper. His expression flickered. The conclusion, Harold continued, is unambiguous. Thomas Ingram was fully competent. Any court in California will accept this evaluation. Your witnesses won't survive cross-examination. Aunt Linda shrank back in her chair. She suddenly seemed very interested in her shoes. Furthermore, Harold produced more papers. The will itself was executed in full compliance with California Probate Code Section 6110, 2 independent witnesses, notarized, legally airtight. He turned to Martinez. You mentioned probate court. I welcome it. We'd win, and then we'd countersue for frivolous litigation. Mom's voice came out strangled. Harold, surely we can discuss this like reasonable people. We are being reasonable, Mrs. Porter. Harold's voice didn't waver. Reason says you have no legal standing. Reason says this will cannot be contested. Reason says your daughter inherits everything her father wanted her to have. Stevens held up a hand. Mr. Whitmore, let's not be hasty. Perhaps there's a middle ground. There is no middle ground. Harold's gaze swept the room. Thomas Ingram spent 20 years preparing for this moment. He knew exactly who would try to take his daughter's inheritance, and he made absolutely certain they would fail. Silence. The lawyers looked at each other. Mom clutched her tissue like a lifeline. Now, Harold said, shall I continue, or do you need a moment? Nobody answered. He continued. Harold held up the USB drive. This contains 47 text messages, 23 phone call recordings, and 15 social media posts. He set it down on the table with a soft click. All documenting a coordinated harassment campaign against my client, threats, defamation, emotional abuse, all perpetrated by people in this room. Aunt Linda's face went white. Uncle Robert uncrossed his arms, suddenly uneasy. California Civil Code Section 1708.7, Harold continued, stalking and harassment. California Civil Code Section 45 and 46, defamation and slander, not to mention intentional infliction of emotional distress. He looked directly at Mom. If this goes to court, Mrs. Porter, I won't just defend the will. I'll file counterclaims for harassment and defamation. I'll subpoena your phone records, your Facebook account, every message you've sent in the past 3 months. Richard slammed his palm on the table. This is ridiculous. We're family. You can't sue family for... I can. Harold's voice remained perfectly level. And I will. The evidence is overwhelming. Would you like to see the messages calling my client selfish, ungrateful, and a disgrace to the family? I have them printed and organized chronologically. Mom turned to Stevens, her composure cracking. Do something! Stevens gathered his papers slowly. His face had the expression of a man who had just realized he was standing on quicksand. Mrs. Porter, I think we need to reassess our position. He glanced at Martinez. Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. I think that's wise, Harold agreed. And while you're reassessing, consider this. Thomas Ingram recorded conversations, including one from 2001, when Mrs. Porter threatened to remove him from his daughter's life unless he surrendered all marital assets. Mom's gasp was audible across the room. Any questions? The room unraveled. Stevens and Martinez stood up, gathering their files with the hurried efficiency of men who wanted to be anywhere else. The legal assistant was already edging toward the door. Mrs. Porter, we'll be in touch. Stevens didn't look at anyone. We recommend you seek alternative counsel regarding this matter. They left without another word. The front door clicked shut behind them. Aunt Linda was crying now. Real tears, not the manufactured kind. Diane, you told us Thomas was confused. You said he didn't know what he was signing. You said, "Shut up, Linda." Mom's mask had finally cracked. Her face twisted with rage as she turned on Harold. You think you've won something? You think this is over? She jabbed a finger at me. She's my daughter. That money should be mine. I was married to Thomas for 9 years. I suffered through those years. You threatened to take his child away. Harold's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Unless he gave up everything. That's not suffering, Mrs. Porter. That's extortion. Uncle Robert stepped forward. Diane, is that true? His voice was different now, uncertain. You always told us Thomas walked out. That he abandoned you and Myra. He did abandon us! I have the recording. Harold reached for his briefcase. Would you like to hear it? No! Mom screamed. She was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. No, I don't. Get out. Get out of my house. Both of you. Get out. Melissa was standing by the stairs, her phone forgotten in her hand. Her face was pale, her eyes fixed on her mother with something I'd never seen before. Horror and recognition. Mom, she whispered, what did you do? Mom didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth had finally filled the room, and there was no space left for lies. We drove in silence for 10 minutes before I could speak. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. Harold, I don't know what would have happened if your father happened. He kept his eyes on the road. I just delivered what he prepared. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Robert. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I should have asked questions instead of making assumptions. Can we talk sometime? Another from Aunt Linda. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about a lot of things. I showed Harold. He nodded slowly. The truth has a way of rearranging people's loyalties. That evening, we sat in Harold's office going over next steps. Change the locks on Dad's house. Install additional security cameras. Document any future contact from Mom or Richard. They won't go quietly, Harold warned. People like that rarely do. Richard especially. He's got a temper, and he just lost in front of his wife's entire family. What can they do? You said the will is solid. Legally? Nothing. Harold removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. But not everything dangerous is legal. Your father knew that too. It's why he installed the security system at the house. He paused. It's still active, by the way. Cloud backup, motion sensors. I have access to the feed. I thought about Richard's face in that living room, the barely contained fury. You really think they'd try something? I think you should be careful. At least until the dust settles. That night, I received one more message, this one from Melissa. I don't expect you to forgive me or Mom, but I need you to know, I'm not going to be part of this anymore. And Myra, please be careful. Dad, Richard, he said some things tonight. I'm scared for you. The dust wasn't settling. It was just getting started. 2 weeks of silence followed the meeting. No calls, no texts, no Facebook posts. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the calm before a hurricane. I started spending time at Dad's house, my house now, sorting through his belongings, preparing to move in. Every drawer I opened felt like a conversation with him. Old photographs, receipts from woodworking supplies, a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Dad," in faded letters. One night, around 11, my phone buzzed with an alert from the security app Harold had set up. Motion detected. Front yard. I opened the live feed, my heart suddenly racing. A dark pickup truck sat at the curb. Headlights off. Engine running. I couldn't see the driver through the tinted windows, but I recognized the truck. Richard's Ford F-150. For 15 minutes, it just sat there. I watched, barely breathing, as the camera recorded every second. Then, without warning, the truck pulled away and disappeared down the street. I called Harold immediately. Could be nothing, he said, though his voice was tight. Could be he was just checking on the property, seeing if you've moved in. At 11 at night? Call the police, make a report, create a paper trail. I did. The officer who came was polite but not particularly concerned. "No crime's been committed, ma'am. We'll note it in the file. Call us if anything else happens." Anything else? Like what? I wanted to ask. Like breaking and entering? Like assault? Like something worse? The next morning, another message from Melissa. "He's been drinking. Every night since the meeting. Mom can't calm him down. He keeps saying you humiliated him, that you'll pay." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I saved it to my evidence folder. The alert woke me at 3:07 a.m. I grabbed my phone, pulse spiking before my eyes even focused on the screen. Motion detected. Front porch. The camera feed loaded. 2 figures. Dark clothing, moving quickly. One carried something. A red container. The kind you fill with gasoline. No. 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 I watched as the first figure poured liquid along the porch railing, across the front steps, around the base of Dad's carefully trimmed bushes. The second figure stood watch, head swiveling left and right. Then the first one pulled out a lighter. I was already dialing 911 before the flame appeared. "Someone's setting fire to my house, 742 Maple Street. I have them on camera." The match dropped. The porch erupted in orange and yellow, flames climbing the wooden railing my father had built with his own hands. But then something happened that neither of the arsonists expected. The sprinkler system activated. Water burst from hidden nozzles. Dad had installed them years ago, a precaution I hadn't even known about until Harold mentioned it. The flames hissed and sputtered, fighting against the spray. On the camera, I watched the 2 figures freeze in shock. Then they ran. Straight toward Richard's pickup truck, parked half a block away. The camera caught the license plate as they drove off. Clear as day. I stayed on the line with 911 until I heard the sirens. The fire trucks arrived in 7 minutes. By then, the sprinklers had done most of the work. The porch was charred, the railing destroyed, but the house, Dad's house, my house, was still standing. The police came next. I showed them the footage. The officer's eyes widened when he saw the license plate. "We know that truck," he said. "We'll have them in custody within the hour." The police station at 4 a.m. has a particular kind of fluorescent emptiness. I sat in a plastic chair, Harold beside me, watching officers move through the hallways like ghosts. Detective Aaron Brooks found us around 4:30, a solid man with tired eyes and a badge that looked like it had seen too much. "Ms. Ingram." He sat down across from us. "We've made 2 arrests, Richard Porter and Diane Porter." I had expected Richard, but hearing my mother's name was different. It landed somewhere in my chest and stayed there, heavy and cold. "We found them at their residence." Mr. Porter's clothes still smelled like gasoline. Mrs. Porter was attempting to delete messages from her phone. Brooks opened a folder. Our tech team recovered them. Communications between the 2 of them planning the fire, discussing timing. She knew Miss Ingram. She wasn't just an accomplice, she helped plan it. Harold's hand found my shoulder. "Would you like to see them?" Brooks asked. "You're under no obligation." I didn't want to. Every rational part of me screamed to go home, to let the justice system handle this, to never look at those faces again. But there was another part. The 7-year-old girl who had stood on that porch, watching her father cry. The teenager who had been made to feel invisible in her own home. The woman who had been called selfish for refusing to give away her dignity. "Yes," I said. "I want to see them." They put me behind one-way glass. Mom sat in interrogation room 2, her makeup smeared, her expensive blouse stained. She didn't look like the woman who had raised me, she looked like a stranger. When she spoke to the detective, her voice cracked. "She's my daughter. I would never hurt my daughter." But she had. She had tried to burn down everything my father left me. The trial took 4 months. It felt like 4 years. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, text messages, gasoline receipts traced to Richard's credit card, 2 neighbors who had seen the truck that night. There was no reasonable doubt to create. Richard went first on the stand. His lawyer tried to paint him as a man driven to desperation by financial pressure. His business had been failing for years, drowning in debt. The inheritance would have saved him. The jury didn't care about his desperation. They cared about the gasoline, the match, the flames. Guilty. Arson in the first degree. Conspiracy to commit arson. 10 years. 7 for the fire. 3 for the conspiracy. Eligible for parole in 6. Mom's lawyer took a different approach. She was a victim, he argued. Manipulated by her husband. Frightened into compliance, she never wanted anyone to get hurt. The text told a different story. If we can't have the money, she doesn't get to keep the house. Burn it down. Her own words, in her own hand. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit arson. 5 years. Possible parole after 3 with good behavior. When the judge read the sentence, Mom turned to look at me through the gallery. Her eyes were red, her face hollow. She mouthed something. It took me a moment to read her lips. "You'll regret this." The same words Richard had said at the cafe. The same words he'd said in her living room. I held her gaze until the bailiff led her away. Outside the courthouse, Harold walked me to my car. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. I don't feel like I won. I just feel empty. "That's normal." He squeezed my arm. "But Myra, your father would be proud." The emptiness shifted just slightly, enough to let something else in. Let me step out of the story for just a second. I want to ask you something honest. Do you think I should forgive my mother? Some people say family is family, no matter what. Others say there are lines that, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. I'd really like to know what you think. Leave a comment and let me know. And if you've ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love, or someone you were supposed to love, you're not alone. What my father wanted me to do next? It surprised even me. The story made the local news. Daughter's inheritance leads to arson plot. My face pixelated on the evening broadcast, but everyone who knew me recognized the house. Work got complicated. My colleagues didn't know how to act around me. Some offered awkward sympathy. Others, I could tell, were curious in that uncomfortable way people get when they smell drama. I kept my head down. Did my job. Tried to remember that I had nothing to be ashamed of. The family fallout was messier. Aunt Linda sent a 5-page handwritten letter. She detailed everything she remembered from my parents' divorce. Things Mom had told her, things she now realized were lies. At the end, she apologized for believing the wrong person for 20 years. Uncle Robert cut ties with Mom completely. He visited me once, standing awkwardly in Dad's living room, now my living room. "I watched your father cry at your graduation," he said. "I didn't understand why. Now I do." He left without asking for anything. That meant more than any apology could. Melissa was the most complicated. She called a week after the sentencing. Her voice was small, nothing like the confident girl who used to get everything while I got nothing. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I know I was part of the problem. I watched them treat you like you didn't matter, and I never said anything." I didn't argue. "But I want you to know, I'm not her. I'm not going to become her." She took a shaky breath. "I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out how much of who I am is really me and how much is just what they made me." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. "Can we maybe start over? Not as sisters, just as two people who share some history?" I thought about it. "We can try." 6 months after the trial, Harold called me to Dad's house for one last meeting. "Thomas asked me to wait," he explained as we stood in Dad's old workshop, the one he'd converted into a study after selling the business. "He wanted to make sure the storm had passed before you saw this." Harold walked to the built-in bookshelf and pressed something I couldn't see. A panel clicked open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a wooden box, hand-carved, polished to a warm glow. The kind of box my father used to make for his best customers. "He made this for you," Harold said quietly. "Spent 3 months on it. Said it was the most important piece he ever built." I lifted the lid with trembling hands. Photographs, dozens of them. Me at 7, grinning with missing teeth. Me at 12, holding a math trophy. Me at 18, in my graduation cap. Me at 25, shaking hands with my boss at my first engineering job. Every picture had a note on the back. Dad's handwriting. Myra, age 7. The day I had to leave. I promised myself I'd find a way back to you. Myra, age 12. I was in the back of the auditorium. You didn't see me, but I saw you. Myra, age 25. I drove 3 hours to watch you walk into that office building. My daughter, the engineer. My heart nearly burst. The last picture was recent. Me, standing in front of my apartment, taken from across the street. The note read, "My beautiful girl, every choice you've made on your own. I couldn't be more proud. The money is just paper. These moments, this is what I'm really leaving you. The proof that I was always there, that I always loved you, even when you couldn't see me." I held the box against my chest and wept. A year has passed since the trial. I live in Dad's house now. Our house. I kept his workshop exactly as he left it. The smell of sawdust and wood polish, his tools hanging in perfect rows on the pegboard, the workbench where he built beautiful things for people who appreciated them. Some nights, I sit out there with a cup of tea and talk to him. I know he can't hear me. Or maybe he can. Either way, it helps. The money sits in an investment account, mostly untouched. I still work my engineering job. I still drive my practical car. Dad lived simply because he believed wealth was about security, not display. I understand that now. Mom is still in prison. She sends letters sometimes. I don't read them. That's not cruelty, it's protection. Harold helped me see the difference. Richard has another 4 years minimum. I have a permanent restraining order for when he gets out. The legal system moves slowly, but it moves. Melissa visits occasionally. We're not close. I don't know if we ever will be, but we're not strangers anymore. She's building her own life, far from the shadow of our parents' choices. I respect that. The family reunions I used to dread? I don't attend them. Not out of bitterness, but because I've learned that obligation isn't the same as love, and DNA isn't the same as loyalty. I have dinner with Uncle Robert once a month. Aunt Linda sends Christmas cards. These small connections, freely chosen, mean more than all the forced proximity of my childhood. I'm not angry anymore. Anger takes too much energy, and I have better uses for mine. But I'm not naive either. I know what people are capable of when money is involved. I know what my own mother was willing to do. I won't forget. But I refuse to let it define me. Sometimes I stand on the front porch, rebuilt now, with the same design Dad originally created, and look out at the street where everything almost ended. I think about the fire, the sprinklers kicking in like Dad was reaching through time to protect me one more time, the cameras that caught every second, the planning and preparation of a man who knew his ex-wife better than anyone, who understood that some people don't stop until they've taken everything or destroyed what they can't have. He didn't just leave me money. He left me armor, and more than that, he left me permission. Permission to say no. Permission to set boundaries. Permission to walk away from people whose love has conditions attached, price tags scribbled in the margins. I used to think family meant forever, no matter what. I used to think blood obligated you to forgive anything, endure anything, accept anything. Dad taught me different. Not through words, through actions. Through 20 years of patient waiting, careful planning, and quiet, steady love that asked nothing in return. If you're watching this, and you recognize something in my story, if you've been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to lift you up, if you've been called selfish for protecting yourself, if you've wondered whether you have the right to say enough, let me tell you what I learned. You don't owe anyone your dignity, not your parents, not your siblings, not anyone. Love should feel like warmth, not like a transaction. And boundaries aren't walls you build to keep people out. They're doors you install so you can choose who gets in. My father left me a house. He left me money. But the real inheritance was simpler and more valuable than any of that. He left me the right to stand tall. And I will never let anyone take that from me again. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story meant something to you, or made you think about the boundaries in your own life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family? How did it change you? If you want more stories like this one, about family, about justice, about finding your voice, subscribe and check out the other videos in the description. I'll see you in the next one.